A brief introduction before I start the video. I wanted to express the importance of preparing gardens, whether it's raised beds or in-ground gardens, for the winter months by ensuring that the ground is covered, whether it's with a cover crop such as wheat or clover, rye, something like that, or whether it's a mulch of straw, compost, etc. It's very important to cover the soil to prevent the winter from eroding the soil and from leaching nutrients out of it. Winter can be very hard on gardens. Nature always has garden covered, or the soil covered. It has leaves and debris that falls onto the ground and covers it and keeps it covered. And we should do the same with our gardens. So this video I'll show how I've prepared all the beds for the winter and encourage you to do the same. Going to do an early winter tour of the gardens and see how everything's looking, getting them all winterized. As the main garden beds are all put to bed for the winter. In this one, got the tomato cages laying on there, stored for the winter. The beds have been cleared off and put straw on them, and they're all mulched and ready for the winter. The greenhouse is operational with the greens growing for the winter. And towards the end of the video, I'll go there. On this side over here, I have the rhubarb plants all mulched and put cow manure on them to get them fertilized for the winter. That'll go down through the beds during the winter months and be good fertilizer for the spring. And so we've got 6 of the rhubarb beds here. They've all been cleaned off and they've all been ready for the winter. I composted all the tops. Have one bed here, it's kind of interesting. It's had a green cover crop going on it, purely by accident. It was no intent to have it on there, but the straw that I put down on this bed here had a lot of wheat grain still in it, and I think it all germinated and it's all growing. So I've got a green manure crop growing on this, which will be turned under in the spring. The other beds are much cleaner. The straw that I used on them did not have as much seed in it, so they're much cleaner and looking better. Out in the north area, I have some beds out there that I'll walk out to. This is the compost bins here. I have one that has been closed for the winter. It's covered with cardboard and held down for the winter, and it's composted down about half of its size. And the one next to it is currently being filled with garden scraps and getting ready for the winter, and a lot of coffee grounds in there. And of course the 2 Jora compost tumblers are still in use. The nice thing about these is that they are insulated, so it continues to make compost well into the winter months because the thick insulation in them retains heat. The comfrey that's growing against the back fence got froze the other night. Temperatures have been down into the 20s. These 2 beds are in our back to Eden garden. This is where we grow the squash and vining plants, melons, and etc. But the beds, there's the arbor on the beds, and that's where we grow the pole beans, cucumbers, and peas. And on the 2 side beds, we grow other vegetables, depending on what we need at that particular time. Again, this bed has been cleaned off and it's ready for winter. It's been mulched. This is the last bed that has not yet been prepared for winter, and that's because it still has the carrots growing in it. Those will be harvested this afternoon, and this bed will be cleaned off and compost or mulched. I'll add new compost to it and then mulch it. One of the compost tumblers is finished. This brown that you see on here is coffee grounds that I've added as a fertilizer. I use a lot of Starbucks coffee grounds in my beds. And an interesting thing is that the Starbucks coffee grounds always have a lot of filters in them. And I simply take the filters and flatten them on the bed, put the grounds on top of it, and by spring those filters are all fully digested. And one of my favorite parts of this garden is this arbor that we build out of cattle panels. It has been extremely helpful in growing climbing vegetables like the pole beans and the peas and the carrots and etc. So these beds are about ready to go. And now we'll walk up and look at the greenhouse. This is the north end of the greenhouse. You can see the vent over the exhaust fan there. Have gas line that feeds into the greenhouse from our propane tank, and have electricity that feeds into it. And this has been a beautiful, productive greenhouse. We've really enjoyed having it, and grew vegetables all winter in it, and planning on doing the same this year. This is the intake vent for the exhaust fan. You can see the vegetables growing in here. On the front is leaf lettuce. That's Merlot leaf lettuce. Adjacent to it is spinach. That's perpetual spinach. And behind it is romaine lettuce. And they've both been recently harvested, but I have some lettuce ready to pick again. Next to it, we have some bok choy growing. I do succession planting. You'll see some small ones there that have replaced big ones we've taken out. And there's an additional small one in the back that you may or may not be able to see. And then on this side, we have Napa cabbage, also called Chinese cabbage. And I do the same thing. As we take those out and eat them, then I plant new seedlings. I have one seedling that just came up, in fact. And next to that is some ruby red Swiss chard, which is a very, very productive Swiss chard. Hanging on the from the rafters are some planters with tomatoes. Those are cherry tomatoes. These are yellow cherry tomatoes on this end and red cherry tomatoes on that end. Sitting in 5-gallon buckets behind it are pepper plants that I dug out of the raised bed and brought in. This one unfortunately got eaten by a tomato hornworm and it's just now coming back. That is a jalapeno. This is a bell pepper, and I'll try and zoom in. See some of the big bell peppers hanging in here. There's about a dozen of them, and those are maturing and getting ready for harvest. This is another jalapeno pepper that I started from seed, and hopefully it'll get going. In this corner, you see 3 black tanks. Those are filled with water, and they absorb heat during the day from the sun, and then they radiate it out. The wooden structure you see there is my potting bench, which is a folding potting bench, and I keep that set up in spring and summer for potting. And during the winter, when I don't need it, I fold it up and put it there because of the heater that's here, and it sets in front of that heater. That's a Blue Flame gas heater, Mr. Heater, that heats this entire greenhouse, keeps it at 50 degrees during the nighttime. Above that is the exhaust fan, which is thermostatically controlled. That white box below it is the thermostat. And there's a fan to circulate air. I turned that off because it was too noisy in here. And over here is just a couple house plants that grow in here. These benches in the spring are used for starting seeds, but this time of year they turn into mostly storage. And below them are my bokashi buckets, which have not yet been set up for this winter month. And then there's another house plant over in this corner. These are airplane plants, also called spider plants. They love to just send out new plants, and each of those plants has roots on them. They could be taken off and start new plants. If you zoom in, you can see the roots hanging on there. There's each one of those is a viable plant. So that's pretty much a summary of the greenhouse. It's really nice working in here during the winter months. And this little raised bed I put in here, don't know if I can back up enough to get a good image of that, but it's 2 foot wide by 6 feet long, and that is able to grow all of our fresh greens during the winter months, which is really nice. And the peppers last year we were able to produce and eat, and I'm hoping for the same this year. The tomatoes is a new experiment. I don't know if we will survive the cool weather of the winter months, but we'll know in a short time. So that's pretty much it for the greenhouse. And as we walk out of the greenhouse, right outside, we go back into the area where the rhubarb plants and the raised beds are. So it's pretty much a tour of the gardens that are all now ready for the winter. It's very, very important to make sure the soil is always covered, never bare. And that's true of all the plants, even the rhubarb, which has to be cold in the winter months, has to be below 40 degrees during the winter months in order to have rhubarb the next year. But it's still important to cover that soil and keep all the soil life active in there. So if you have any questions about it, winter gardening, etc., post them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.